Social distancing at the chamber. My name is Garrick Taylor. We also call this segment Happy Hour with Hammer. Glenn, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Garrick.
I should note, for those of you who are just tuning in, really, I know you all are longtime watchers. Glenn's the CEO of the Arizona Chamber. Glenn, today we kick off the 55th Arizona Legislature. We kick 2021 into high gear. Let's go through the day's events. Obviously, today was the State of the State delivered by Governor Doug Ducey. But before we get to that, we have to dispense with a little business at the state capitol, where legislators reelected Karen Fann as Senate President and Rusty Bowers as House Speaker. What do you think of that outcome?
The entire state is fortunate to have those two exceptional leaders at the helm during this difficult time. Speaker Bowers and Senate President Fann, they're collegial, they're cooperative. They always try to get the broadest possible set of votes on any proposal. They've made, when we were able to visit the Capitol in person safely, it was a good environment. And, Garrick, I'm thrilled with that outcome.
All right, later in the afternoon, a little bit after 2 o'clock, the governor began his State of the State. Before we get into the substance of the State of the State, substance of the speech, we should note that the style was a little different this year because of obvious public health protocols. He had to deliver it via live stream from his office. First of all, any reaction to that? Just the stagecraft of how it was handled?
It worked. It was the right way to deliver this speech, given the state of where we stand, and I felt it was very effective. Actually, we're all used to the great lines, the applause, the pageantry, and we both, Garrick, have been to many State of the States, and it's a great feeling to be there in person. It's always a very it's a special. It's opening day.
Sure, people
are happy. There's a lot of bipartisan camaraderie, and we look forward to getting back to that next year. But given the state of affairs this year, what I thought that this speech, it was direct, it was bold, it was compact, and it worked.
Glenn, the governor bookended the speech at the top at the top and the bottom of the speech, really focusing on tone, civility, binding wounds. Obviously, this all comes just a few days after what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Glenn, I thought that was the right opening move before we get into policy proposals, just to set the table, so to speak, for the mood of the session.
It was the right way to open the speech. I mean, what happened last week in Washington, D.C. was one of the darkest episodes in our nation's history. The citadel of democracy was defiled. We quickly, and we appreciate our friends at the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, put out a very strong statement denouncing what occurred and calling for an immediate end, obviously, to all violent acts. I felt it was important for the governor to mention that because that was such a big event in our nation's history. That's not something you're just going to sweep away. That's something our grandkids, unfortunately, are going to know and learn about.
Yeah. Glenn, there are a number of policy items that were in the speech, but they were all within the context of the pandemic. Vaccines because of the pandemic, economic recovery coming back from the pandemic-induced downturn, building back or closing some of the achievement gaps due to the pandemic. You can't avoid it. The pandemic has touched every facet of Arizona life.
What are we doing right now?
Yeah, right.
We're Zoom, so that's exactly right, Garrick. And what I also thought was important, and I know he meant it, and we share the governor's views, is his deep appreciation for all of our healthcare heroes. I mean, they have been working around the clock. Words can't express how grateful we are They're keeping it all together. And what I also felt was important is that really the first major policy item that he announced was the 24/7 vaccination center at State Farm Stadium, where the Arizona Cardinals play. That's the only way to get out of this pandemic for our hospital, our public health, as well as to have a full economic recovery. We need a certain amount of Arizonans vaccinated. That's the only path forward that gives us the possibility, which we will have occur, to return to a normal life.
After the governor talked about the 24/7 vaccination location at the stadium, we got into some more policy things that we could attack during the session. One of those is speeding along the economic recovery. A lot of concern about businesses of all sizes, especially small businesses. The governor did not propose a specific tax reform, but said, let's go big. What do you think, Glenn? Should we go big when it comes to tax reform?
We need to go big. As the governor said, every year during his tenure, he's made progress in simplifying and reducing our income taxes. And he's done a number of other things on regulations and licensing that have made this state easily, if not the best state in the country, always in a top 5 list when it comes to job creation. But we know we're going to have to work even harder if that Proposition 208 sticks. It's under legal challenge. We're now going to have one of the highest small business tax rates in the country, one of the 9 highest at 8%. That's a problem. Fortunately, we have a legislature in the control of those who are going to do everything possible to make sure that we remain competitive when it comes to our tax system. I'm very impressed, particularly with some of the comments that have been put out by Ways and Means Chairwoman Shauna Bollock. So I feel we're going to have a very good session when it comes to tax reform.
Glenn, on the subject of education, there's a bit of a good news, bad news scenario. There's been a number of families that have tried online education. Maybe they didn't know they liked it, but they're using it now. Others have chosen to pursue other options, whether homeschool pods, charter options, private options, you name it. And the governor said that's their right. We should applaud them, support them, and celebrate them. On the flip side, though, there are too many kids who either don't have access to a number of choices, or they don't have the tools necessary to get online and continue their education. And the governor said he wants to attack that this session.
That was really in a short period of time. It was really detailed. He's going to protect the innovation that's been occurring since the pandemic began. That's super important. But it was I thought it was actually pretty darn specific when it came to the losses of students that, we're going to look for extra tutoring. It could be extended days, summer school. We're going to do whatever we have to do so those kids catch up. And I felt that was really important. And also the governor has always made clear, he's respected that parents have different needs and different choices,
Sure.
but he clearly feels strongly, and I believe he's correct, that in-person learning is superior to screen learning. And I agree with him. So I felt that he covered all the bases there respectfully. And also when it came to, I thought it was important when he was talking about vaccinations to make sure that our teachers get the vaccinations and are prioritized.
Right. And that's the interesting part about this entire speech, was that the impacts of the pandemic are unavoidable. We're now in phase 1B, at least in Maricopa County. That's teachers, Glenn. And so by establishing this 24/7 vaccination facility, get more teachers vaccinated, the more likely we're going to get kids back in the classroom, at least on a much more regular basis.
Well, I just appreciate all the teachers out there that have been working so hard in the most difficult of circumstances to educate our children. And I'm not just saying that as a chamber guy. I'm saying that as a dad with 2 daughters in our public school system.
Glenn, another item that he made mention of, and an area where you have said you believe there's a chance for some real bipartisan support, is making sure that there's some enterprising plaintiffs' attorneys who don't use the pandemic as an opportunity to line their pockets. The governor called that issue out today and said it's an area that we want to solve.
We should get bipartisan support for this. We're not talking about, and I'm sure the governor isn't talking about protecting egregious or purposeful misconduct. But when it comes to small businesses, when it comes to universities, when it comes to K through 12 schools, when it comes to nonprofits, when it comes to doctors, when it comes to hospitals, doing everything they can to keep people safe, whether they're patients, workers, or customers, they shouldn't have to worry about the extra burden of enterprise trial attorneys taking advantage of a once-in-a-century pandemic.
Glenn, something the chamber has supported in previous sessions, and we did last session before things were cut short, is that infrastructure means many things. And sometimes that means electronic infrastructure, including the broader deployment of broadband. It's essential for our economic development. We want all states to be able to enjoy the fruits of this economy, but also it's a big deal for students, teachers, and parents.
I really appreciated the governor mentioning that. That has strong bipartisan support, particularly in rural Arizona. That's vital. And the positive here, Garrick, is as we move forward with better broadband, that will be good for our K through 12 education. It'll also be very good for our economy, where people will have the opportunity to be on a level playing field with, say, the larger metropolitan areas. So I felt that was another really important detail of his State of the State speech.
Glenn, in your statement today, you sort of wrapped things up when you were going down the laundry list of issues by discussing the idea of the lockdown, and that resisting a lockdown is the right move. And today, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo even talked about his state's economy is going to have to, I hate to say just learn, when we say learn to live with the virus, it makes it sound like we've just sort of given up. It means that we can be smart, and with testing and vaccinations, we can be on a glide path to reopening. And I think that the governor, as we know, he's got critics from all sides. Either he's done too much or he's not done enough, but he stuck to his guns today.
Well, he's right, and I've felt that he's had the right touch throughout this pandemic. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a free for all. We have mask mandates in almost all of the metropolitan areas of the state. There are universities that are K through 12 schools. There are other requirements when it comes to conducting, eating at a restaurant and things like that in terms of capacity limits and things. So it's been a thoughtful approach. And the fact is, a lot of other states have copied Arizona's approach as we've gone through this pandemic, including my birth state of New York and Governor Cuomo. So it's as the governor said, no one's pitching a shutout here, but I feel like we're doing the best we possibly can to protect lives and livelihoods.
Yeah. A very good speech today. It didn't have all the usual pomp and circumstance, but as you said, it was extremely effective. It really got the job done. So credit to the governor and his team for an excellent job, and good job with the legislature for kicking things off with the re-election of the speaker and the Senate president. Before we go, Glenn, you mentioned what happened on January 6th. I'm just curious if you wanted to share a personal reflection, since you worked there for 10 years. Your daughter was a Senate page. I would imagine watching what you saw unfold on your screen was just bizarre.
It was unimaginable. I mean, I find the U.S. Capitol the most inspirational place on the planet. I went through some of the photos I've taken over the years. Every time I go to D.C., I worked at the Capitol. I worked for a great United States Senator in John Kyle, a great congressman, as you did in Matt Salmon. And I used to just sometimes go to the Capitol, go outside just to get inspired. And it's for all of us, Republicans, Democrats, or whatever party you may or may not be. And, you know, the fact that also my daughter was a US Senate page there a few years ago, the thought that violent looters would turn into a mob and cause damage that not only desecrated the Capitol, but led to a loss of life is something that can never be repeated in our country's history again. And all of the people involved, throw the book at him.
Yep. Well said. He's Glenn Hammer. I'm Garrick Taylor. We'll be checking in throughout the legislative session. Glenn, it's probably going to be a mostly virtual legislative session, but we don't know for sure. We'll see how things go, and we'll check in from time to time.
Sounds great, Garrick. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Glenn.